My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm 37 years old. As a designer, I'm enjoying a fulfilling life. Next year, I'm set to marry the man I love, and while I am at the peak of happiness, the truth is that I went through a divorce 4 years ago. My ex-husband, Tom Swift, is a year older than me and works as a pilot for a certain airline. At that time, he mainly handled international flights. About 6 months into our relationship, Tom proposed to me on my birthday. "Emily, I promise to make you happy. You're the only woman for me, now and forever. Will you marry me?" What? Tom? Are you serious? You're not joking, right? Of course not. I'm serious. I love you, Emily. A proposal after just 6 months of dating. Normally, one would need some time to respond. I was taken by surprise, but just like Tom, I had no doubts about our future filled with love and happiness. I didn't need any time to think about my 2-word response. "Yes, please." On our way back, still buzzing with excitement, Tom added, "Let's go to the registry office tomorrow. We can't risk changing our minds. I want to be with you right away. Don't worry, my feelings won't change. You never know. I can't live without you, Emily." Tom has always been the assertive type. He had been the one pulling me along in our relationship, even when I was hesitant. That night was full of surprises, but I was completely drawn into Tom's pace. And we actually submitted our marriage registration the very next day. I informed my parents over the phone. And while they were a bit worried about us getting married after just 6 months of dating, they eventually gave their blessing. 6 months of dating? Aren't you just swept up in the moment? Do you really know him well enough? Dad, it's fine. Tom is a reliable person. Trust me. Well, all right then. Be happy. Thank you, Dad. Back then, I wasn't just swept up in the excitement of love. Tom had previously shared his background with me. I got here on my own. I didn't have the money or connections to attend flight school. I sacrificed time with friends and focused solely on studying to get into the airline. Even after joining, I worked hard to stay at the top. Tom had lost his parents when he was young and was raised by his grandparents in a modest household. I admired him for his determination to pursue his dreams. But now, looking back, I think we may have rushed things a bit. The day we submitted our marriage registration, I canceled my apartment lease and moved into Tom's place. Our new life together is starting, Tom said excitedly, and I couldn't help but smile shyly. Let's always keep our home bright and happy. The wedding is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress, Emily. We really did get married, didn't we? Things moved so quickly that sometimes I couldn't believe we were actually married. It took about a month to find the perfect venue. And just as we were about to start choosing the dress and other wedding preparations, something changed. Tom's attitude shifted drastically after we visited my parents. I need to properly greet Emily's parents. I was so happy at the time that I might have been a bit disrespectful to them. Yes, they were worried about us getting married after only 6 months of dating. We need to reassure them as soon as possible. So, that weekend, we planned a visit to my parents' home. Tom, who usually wasn't nervous, seemed unusually anxious that day, even buttoning his jacket incorrectly. By the way, my parents live in Ohio. When we finally arrived in the late afternoon, I was excited to be back home. But as soon as Tom saw the house, he suddenly said, "Wait, is this your parents' house, Emily?" "Yes, that's right." What's wrong? At that moment, I couldn't understand what Tom meant by his comment. Nothing, really. My parents had prepared delicious fish and local dishes for us. And I felt nostalgic, enjoying the flavors of my hometown. However, Tom's behavior was a bit odd. He seemed tense, hardly speaking while we were at my parents' house. And even made some condescending remarks like, "There's really nothing around here. It's quite plain, isn't it?" His mood didn't improve after we returned to the hotel. When I asked him what was wrong, he just replied, "Nothing." I was confused by this unfamiliar side of Tom, but I thought it would pass with time. Unfortunately, even after returning to New York, his mood didn't change. "I'm really busy with work, Emily." "You are too, right? And about the wedding, let's call it off." "What? Are you serious?" "Yeah, I mean, how are we supposed to plan it when I'm hardly ever home?" "Well, you don't have to worry about it. I can handle the planning." Even though I tried to reassure him, he said, "I don't want to spend all that money on something that lasts just 2 hours. To be honest, I've lost interest in having a wedding." So, we ended up canceling the ceremony. Tom, being a pilot for international flights, was often away from home. But after that, he almost never came back. When he did, he was distant, barely acknowledging anything I said. I felt invisible. Not long after, I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified about how to tell Tom and how he would react. But I thought maybe this could bring us closer again. I decided to tell him over the phone. Tom was silent for a while. "Hey, we're having a baby. Don't you have anything to say?" "Oh, not really." My heart was breaking. "Tom, you don't seem very happy about it." You're so annoying." "I'm busy, I gotta go." He hung up, leaving me staring at the phone in shock. The nausea from morning sickness, combined with Tom's coldness and my fears about the future, pushed me into a deep emotional spiral. Although I told my parents and 2 close friends, I kept it a secret from my workplace. The stress was unbearable. I couldn't eat and buried myself in work to hide my loneliness. As a result, within 2 months, I suffered a miscarriage, losing the baby in a devastating wave of bleeding. I informed Tom by email, but he never replied. A year later, after enduring our estranged life, I began to consider divorce as a possibility. But it seemed I wasn't the only one. One day, Tom left without saying a word, leaving only a signed divorce paper on the table. I couldn't think of any reason for the way Tom had been treating me. If I had to pinpoint a moment, it would be when we visited my parents' house. "Wait, this is your parents' house, Emily?" His tone had been slightly condescending. Even after we entered the house, Tom looked around as if he had seen something repulsive, which had bothered me. Though I had been considering divorce myself, it was because our marriage had become unbearable. But that didn't mean I hadn't dreamed of a happy married life. When I saw the divorce papers, I collapsed in shock. Desperate for an explanation, I called Tom with tears streaming down my face. "Yeah? What's up?" It was the first time I'd heard Tom's voice in a while, and it was still as indifferent as ever. His cold, sharp tone cut through me. Gathering my courage, I asked for the reason. "Tom, why?" "Why?" "You know why. I've fallen out of love." "I'm not asking why you want a divorce. I want to know why you fell out of love. You're not the woman I thought you were, Emily. But your attitude changed suddenly after you saw my parents' house. We were having fun on the train ride there. But as soon as we arrived, everything changed." Why? If you really want to know, I'll tell you. Tom snapped, getting angry as I mentioned how his attitude had shifted. After visiting my parents' home. The woman who's with me needs to be perfect. I've worked my way up here solely on my own abilities. Do you understand? I'm perfect now. My wife has to match that perfection. If my wife's family lives in such a shabby house, it lowers my value. It's too embarrassing to even mention. I can't be associated with a poor and dirty background. Got it? Ah, so that's why you wanted to cancel the wedding. You were embarrassed by my parents? I was more shocked than angry and couldn't say anything more. Whatever. I've got another woman moving into the apartment. So you need to be out by the end of the month. With that, Tom ended the call abruptly. As for me, as you might imagine, I broke down in tears. The pain of realizing that my love with Tom was truly over, coupled with the shock of being spoken to so cruelly, overwhelmed me. I couldn't process it and just cried until my pillow was soaked. At that moment, I thought I'd never recover. 2 months later, I pushed my feelings for Tom deep into the recesses of my mind and headed to Australia to attend my cousin's wedding. It was an international flight, so there was a chance I might run into Tom at the airport. I felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity about seeing him again, combined with a desire never to see him. But fate has a way of playing tricks on us. As I was heading toward the airport lounge where I was supposed to meet my family, I heard a familiar voice from behind me. I turned around and saw Tom. Our eyes met, and I quickly tried to escape into the lounge. But it was too late. Tom grabbed my arm. "What are you doing here?" "None of your business, Tom." I shook off his hand. That hurt. "Do you even know where you are? You tried to run from me, but this lounge is for first-class passengers only." "I know that. I'm meeting my family here." "Are you stupid? I told you, only first-class passengers can enter here. Do you even know what first class means? Don't insult me." "Of course, I know what first class is." "Exactly, so you should know you can't get in here without paying a hefty fare. There's no way your poor parents could afford that." I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. "It's none of your business. And stop with the poor nonsense. What on earth are you misunderstanding?" And then, there was the flight attendant standing next to Tom, laughing quietly the whole time, completely disrespectful. Especially since I'm still technically a customer. I shot her a glance. Tom noticed and said, "Oh, her? She's my new wife." I couldn't believe my ears. It had only been 2 months since our divorce was finalized. What? It's only been 2 months since our divorce, right? So what? Are you going to cry about it and try to get alimony? Too bad for you. Catherine's also an international flight attendant. So we've known each other for a long time. Ridiculous. So that's what this was all about. I'm truly disgusted. Can a person really change so much? Or maybe this was who Tom really was all along, and I was just blind because I was in love. Then Tom, as if I had asked, started talking about more things. Catherine's father is a state senator. When I met her parents, their house was a mansion. Nothing like your parents' place. Yeah, whatever. In the end, it was all about status for Tom. I was too disgusted to even respond. How could I have fallen in love with someone like him? I felt ashamed of myself. But what surprised me more was how Catherine seemed. Completely unfazed by Tom's words. "Hey, Is this the woman who was Tom's ex-wife? Wow, Tom, I didn't know you liked short-haired women too. What is this woman talking about? Tom is practically stating that the only thing that matters to him is her family's status. And she's worried about the length of my hair? It's almost impressive that she managed to become a flight attendant. And her family's poor, right? She's a dirty woman with dandruff, isn't she? So gross. First of all, what on earth did Tom tell her? Dandruff? That's a wild exaggeration. What kind of woman has he made me out to be? And as for Catherine, as I've said, I'm still technically a customer. It's beyond ridiculous. I'm not poor, and I take a bath every day. Oh, really? I thought you didn't. And even if I were poor, so what? Is status more important to you than love? You didn't even know anything about my family when we first met. Yeah, that's the thing. I made a mistake. Emily, you're a designer, and you're stylish, so I never expected your family to be that poor. I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be a compliment or an insult. This is just unbelievable. In any case, the two of them were completely absorbed in their own conversation. And I started to feel foolish for engaging with them. Just then, Tom suddenly took off his hat and straightened himself. Catherine, the woman next to him, did the same. Confused, I turned around to see what was happening. And that's when I heard a voice behind me. Emily. It was my grandfather. He had come to join us in the lounge before we boarded the flight to attend my cousin's wedding. Oh, Grandpa. Grandpa? Is everything all right, Emily? Is there a problem? No, it's nothing. I just ran into some people I know. You go on ahead, Grandpa. All right, I'll go inside then. I encouraged my grandfather to enter the lounge ahead of me. Wait, that's your grandfather, Emily? No way. Yes, why? That suit he's wearing is from a high-end Italian brand. It must have cost around $3,000. Is that so? I don't really know much about men's fashion. Emily, is your grandfather wealthy? What does he do? Well, he's the chairman of a major corporation, but why does that matter? Oh, and by the way, my parents may live in an old house, but they're both doctors. My father is a professor of surgery at a national hospital. And my mother runs her own medical spa. The house you insulted as poor and dirty? It's their way of keeping themselves grounded and not letting their status control them. But looking at how you've behaved, it seems like it was a good thing I took you there. Emily, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I said some terrible things. Catherine, I want a divorce. Emily, please marry me again. I promise I'll make you happy. Wow, Tom, that's so mean. Was Tom always this fickle? This was the second time I'd heard those words. The first was when he ignored me for a year and left without a word. Now, the moment he realized my family had money, he flipped his attitude completely. It was so absurd that I suddenly felt all my feelings for Tom disappear. The man standing in front of me was not the Tom I once knew. I'm really sorry, Emily. I wasn't thinking straight back then. The one who wasn't thinking straight was me. Is this the real you, Tom? I only said those things because I thought you were poor. So, you change your attitude towards people based on their wealth? Do you enjoy looking down on others? And weren't you poor yourself once? In my anger, I blurted out something I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, I was poor, okay? And so were you. Tom's tone suddenly softened, and he spoke in a cold yet sorrowful voice. As we were going through this farcical exchange, my parents arrived at the lounge. The moment they saw Tom, my father's face lit up in recognition, followed by a furious expression. You. So you're the one who hurt my precious daughter. He looked ready to throw a punch, but my mother held him back with all her strength. Emily's miscarriage was your fault. And you ignored her for a year just because you thought we were poor? Calling her a dirty and poor woman, how could you be so rotten? Don't you feel ashamed as a man? No, No, the one who was really rotten was me. Even though the face Tom showed me is like that of a completely different person now. The fact that I once loved someone like him is honestly embarrassing. Just then, my grandfather received a message from my parents saying they had arrived, and he stepped outside the lounge to greet them. What's all this commotion about? Grandpa. Why is there so much yelling? Did this pilot do something? Dad, did something? This man is Emily's ex-husband. At my father's words, I could see the terror in Tom's eyes. He was frozen solid, like ice. Ex-husband? Is this the guy? And he's one of our pilots? What? Our pilots? Yes, for our airline. I'm the chairman. Chairman? Tom was trembling from head to toe. Why didn't you tell me, Emily? Oh, I guess you didn't mention it, Emily. Well, I didn't want to trouble Grandpa, and honestly, it felt weird to bring it up like gossip. But why did you invite me to that rundown? Oh. I'm sorry. Your family's home. Oh, the house? Yeah, I guess it's understandable you'd think that just from looking at it. But Mom and Dad decided to keep it as is because they find it comfortable. And for some future reasons. They do have another house in the city, but we just invited you to our family home. Because it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Why didn't you say anything? Would it have changed anything if I had? So, my status was all it took to change your feelings? Guess you never really saw me for who I am. I'm better off without someone like that, anyway. Gah. The truth is, my grandfather and I are very close. He knew all about my divorce, and he was the one who supported me through it. I didn't mention to him that Tom was a pilot at the same airline. Because I didn't want to add to Tom's burdens. But now, the moment had come. My grandfather, thinking Catherine was just a flight attendant, said, "This is a family matter, so you should leave." Yes. Excuse me. Catherine hurried off, unable to hide her surprise. I was so disgusted that I had no intention of defending Tom anymore. I told my grandfather the truth, that Catherine was Tom's new wife. Wait, you just got divorced, didn't you? And now you've already married someone else? What do you think you're doing? Hurting my granddaughter and then rushing into another marriage? My grandfather was as furious as my father. Did you cheat on Emily while you were still married to her? Well, no, sir. There was this younger flight attendant, and when I got divorced, I was really upset and confided in her. Before I knew it, she became someone close to me, you know? That's how it happened. Lies. How can you stand there and lie so easily? It's unbelievable. I relayed everything Tom had just said to me to my parents and grandfather. They were both visibly furious, their lips pressed tightly together, struggling to contain their anger. But the sheer childishness of the situation left them at a loss for words. If I weren't your boss, I'd probably punch you right here and now. Grandpa, it's okay. I realize now that I was seeing a different Tom all along. I've completely gotten over it. I had never seen my grandfather so angry before. He told Tom and Catherine, "We will discuss this matter with the family and ensure that Emily receives the compensation she deserves for the pain she's suffered. Remember that. Understood?" With that, he led my parents and me into the lounge. A few days later, I received a call from my grandfather. "Emily, how are you holding up? Have you heard anything from that man?" He sent me some pathetic excuse-filled emails, but I've ignored them all. I see. I wish I could find a way to make him pay for what he did. My grandfather was still upset and worried about the incident that day. But I had already gotten over it. He's usually a calm and rational man, never one to wish ill on others. But it seems that, no matter how old I get, I'm still his precious granddaughter. He was determined to make Tom face the consequences, even if it meant stepping down as chairman for my sake. I tried to calm him down, but deep inside, the thought of Tom going on with his life as if nothing happened made me angry too. "Grandpa, how about this? I'm not sure how it will turn out, but I'll hire a lawyer." So, out of the options my grandfather suggested, I chose the one that would cause him the least trouble, demanding alimony from Tom. However, I didn't have any concrete evidence that Tom had been cheating. I knew about the new woman before we finalized the divorce. But I hadn't recorded anything, so it wasn't solid proof. At the same time, my grandfather became curious and started asking other flight attendants and pilots in Tom's international flight department about his relationship with Catherine. What started as a simple fact-finding mission for his granddaughter quickly turned into a serious company issue. When one of Tom's fellow pilots said, "That guy's a womanizer. He's always asking the flight attendants and even some passengers for their phone numbers." This comment triggered a major internal investigation. Whether that pilot let it slip accidentally or intentionally exposed Tom, it wasn't clear. But according to my grandfather, Tom's arrogant attitude, boasting about being an international pilot, hadn't won him many friends among his colleagues. Tom ended up facing multiple interviews as part of the investigation. Realizing he couldn't escape, he confessed to misconduct with passengers. He even admitted, "I thought Emily's family was poor, and marrying her made me feel like I was still poor. That's why I approached Catherine, whose father is a state senator, to boost my status." That testimony, along with other evidence, confirmed that Tom had been unfaithful while we were still married. I successfully sued him for $30,000 in alimony. Honestly, I didn't want the money, but as my lawyer explained, it was the only way to hold him accountable. Tom didn't just lose his reputation, he also lost his position as a pilot. Although he wasn't fired outright, he was removed from flying duties due to his violation of company policy and disruption of workplace morale. Now, Tom works in a department where he has no contact with passengers or flight attendants. After losing his job as a pilot, Catherine left him and they divorced. It seems that, just like Tom, Catherine had married him for his status. In a way, they were a perfect match for each other. A while later, I met up with some close friends, and we ended up talking about Tom. "Emily, that must have been tough. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine now." "That's good to hear. By the way, was Tom really a different person after you started dating? Which version of him was the real Tom?" "You know, I've thought about that too. Even though I've gotten over it, there's something that still bothers me. When I said something really harsh to Tom in anger, his face looked so sad. And according to my grandfather, Tom said during one of his interviews that he felt like he was still poor after marrying me. That stuck with me. I see. I wonder if people really change when they get money. Well, it doesn't really matter now. Cheers. Tom had dreamed of becoming a cool pilot during his student years. He studied relentlessly and worked hard to achieve that goal. But once he did, he became arrogant. Many people lose their humility when they start getting attention from others. Maybe Tom needed the same kind of reminder that my parents had. With their home, a way to keep themselves grounded and not let status and power take over. Tom's hard work went to waste, and now he's living alone in a small apartment, eating instant noodles for dinner. As for me, I'm planning my second wedding for next year. I met my fiancé on the flight to Australia for my cousin's wedding. He was on the flight for a vacation, and we hit it off right away. After 4 years of dating, we're getting married next year. Both our families are thrilled for us. And we recently went on a family trip to Florida together. And, actually, our family is about to grow. In May next year, we'll be welcoming a new addition. Yes, I'm expecting a baby. Everything is going smoothly, and I'm currently 26 weeks along. At the last checkup, we found out it's a boy. Both of our families are so excited that they've already started shopping for baby clothes and shoes, even though it's a bit early. My fiancé suggested that we name our son after my grandfather, who's now watching over us from above. Grandpa, I'm doing well.